If someone had told me that the best day of my career would also become the first crack in everything I thought was safe, I wouldn't have believed them. That morning, the Chicago skyline looked brighter than usual sunlight bouncing off the glass towers, the kind of day that makes you believe good things are coming. I didn't know that by sunset the same light would feel like a spotlight, exposing every hidden fracture in my family. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and this story is about how success turned me into the enemy in my own bloodline. But before we get there, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you've ever had to fight for what's rightfully yours. I was 33, working as a financial analyst at Monarch Investments, a sleek firm in downtown Chicago. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the employee who didn't take long lunches or join happy hours, who brought her own coffee and left the office last. Not because I loved spreadsheets, but because I had a goal: stability. That Monday, an email popped up from Greg Bennett, my manager. Subject: promotion consideration, senior risk manager. My hands actually shook. The position came with a six-figure salary and, more importantly, a seat at the decision table. I clicked it open, heart pounding. Pending final review, you're our top candidate, Lauren. HR just needs confirmation of personal financial stability ownership or equivalent assets. It's part of the new compliance policy for executive roles. Ownership. Assets. I exhaled, smiling. My condo in West Loop, the tiny one-bedroom I'd renovated by hand, was finally going to mean more than just a roof over my head. It was my ticket to the next level. Greg stopped by my desk an hour later, his tie loosened like always. "You earned this," he said, tapping the edge of my monitor. "Keep your credit spotless for the next 3 months and don't do anything crazy like sell your apartment." We both laughed, but that line would haunt me later. After he left, I opened my refinancing folder documents neatly labeled appraisal, credit history, savings. I was in the middle of refinancing the condo to invest in a small rental unit in Oak Park, about 20 minutes away. It was the final step toward financial independence, a dream built from years of saying no to vacations, to dinners, to anything that wasn't essential. I leaned back, imagining how it would feel to finally call my parents and tell them I'd made it. But then the familiar chill crept in, the memory of every phone call where my achievements were met with silence before Mom changed the subject to my sister, Erica. Still, I convinced myself things would be different this time. Maybe they'd be proud. Maybe, for once, my name would mean more than responsibility. That night, I sat by my window overlooking the river, city lights flickering like promises. My promotion, my condo, my future, it all felt steady for the first time. I didn't know that within days, the same home that proved my independence would become the very thing my family tried to take away. By the end of that same week, my inbox was filled with spreadsheets, refinance documents, and one message I wish I'd ignored: family dinner Saturday. 6 p.m. Don't be late. We need to talk. Mom. Those 4 words, "we need to talk," had never once led to anything good. Still, part of me wanted to believe maybe this time would be different. Maybe it was about the promotion, maybe finally something good. Saturday came cold and gray, the kind of early spring chill that turns Chicago's suburbs into muted postcards. I drove 45 minutes north to Evanston, past tidy lawns and houses that all looked like versions of my parents' 2-story home, neat, proper, and quiet enough to hide secrets. Mom, Carol, opened the door before I even rang. "Lauren, honey." "You look so thin. Are you eating?" The script never changed. "I'm fine, Mom. Long week." "Dad," Richard called from the living room without looking up from the TV. "Traffic bad? You know, if you lived closer, you wouldn't have to make such a trek." "I like the city," I said. "Closer to work." At the table, the air already felt heavy. The good china was out, a bad sign. Mom poured wine I didn't ask for and smiled like someone rehearsing kindness. Erica's chair sat empty. "She's running late," Mom said. Rough few weeks. I forced a polite smile. Erica was always having a rough few weeks. Dinner started with silence forks against porcelain, the hum of the fridge filling the space where conversation should have been. Then, right as Mom set down the roast, the front door slammed. Erica walked in wearing sunglasses, though it was already dark, her hair piled in a messy bun, makeup smudged. "Don't everyone rush to greet the family disgrace," she said with a dry laugh, tossing her coat over a chair. "Erica," Dad warned. "What? I'm acknowledging the elephant in the room before you do." She plopped into her seat, grabbed the wine bottle, and poured a full glass. I tried to sound gentle. "I'm sorry things have been hard. How's Daniel?" The glass froze halfway to her lips. "We're getting divorced," she said flatly. "He's being an ass about the prenup." Mom put a hand on her shoulder. "He's trying to leave her with nothing, Lauren, after everything she's done for him." I blinked. "You mean after she cheated?" The room went silent. Mom's eyes widened as if I'd shouted profanity in church. Dad set down his knife with deliberate calm. "That's not helpful," he said. "Helpful?" I laughed quietly. "You invited me here to, rewrite the story?" Mom's voice softened in that way she used when manipulation wore a smile. "Sweetheart, we're not asking for much. Erica needs a good attorney, someone who can find a way around that awful prenup. But those lawyers cost money." I already felt the floor tilting. "You want me to loan her money?" Dad cleared his throat. "Not a loan, a family investment. We thought since your apartment's appreciated—" I stared at him. "You're kidding." Mom leaned forward, hands clasped. "If you sell, you'd have more than enough to help Erica and still rent somewhere nice for yourself. It's just a temporary sacrifice." Temporary sacrifice. I'd heard that phrase my whole life. When they used my college savings for Erica's dance competitions, when they said I didn't need a car because I was so independent, I pushed my plate away. I worked 60-hour weeks to buy that place. Every tile, every wall, I did myself. Erica snorted. "It's just a condo, Lauren. You'll get another." Her words hit harder than she knew. "It's not just a condo," I said. "It's my life's work. My home. The proof that I'm not someone you can take from anymore." Dad's tone shifted to command. "Family helps family. You're comfortable, she's in crisis." "When have you ever helped me?" I asked. Mom looked offended. "We raised you. We gave you everything." I laughed bitterly. "You gave Erica everything. You gave me lectures about being the responsible one. You taught me to fix her mistakes." Erica slammed her glass down, red wine splashing onto the tablecloth. "You think you're better than me because you followed the rules? You've always been jealous." "Enough!" Dad's voice boomed. "Lauren, think carefully before you say no. We expect you to do the right thing." I stood, chair scraping the tile. "Then you'll be disappointed. My answer's no." Mom's face twisted, half hurt, half fury. "How can you be so selfish?" "Selfish," I said quietly. "For the first time in my life, I'm not." As I walked toward the door, Dad's voice followed, low and cold. "This isn't over, Lauren." "Isn't. One way or another, you'll help your sister." Outside, the air was biting, the streets silent except for the hum of distant traffic. I sat in my car for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. For years I'd been their reliable daughter, the fixer. But that night, driving back toward the lights of Chicago, I realized something new. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a declaration of war. By Monday morning, I had almost convinced myself the dinner was just another family argument, ugly, but temporary. Families fight, they cool off. They don't actually follow through on threats, right? That illusion lasted until 9:12 a.m. I was sipping burnt office coffee when my coworker Jenna stopped by my cubicle, her face tight. "Lauren, have you seen this?" She turned her phone toward me. A headline glared back in bold letters on a local lifestyle blog called Family Values Forum. Chicago banker abandons her family in their time of need. The article used my full name, my job title, even a photo from my LinkedIn profile. I kept scrolling, my stomach tightening with every sentence. While her younger sister faces emotional and financial ruin after a devastating betrayal, sources say Lauren Mitchell refuses to help, despite owning a luxury condo in Chicago's West Loop. Her parents describe her as cold, materialistic, and ungrateful. My vision blurred. Cold, materialistic, ungrateful. Words I'd heard whispered behind closed doors my entire life now broadcast for strangers to judge. Jesus, Jenna muttered. They can't just publish this, right? I swallowed hard. They can if the sources are my parents. Notifications started popping up on my phone. Texts, missed calls, a dozen Facebook tags. I opened one message from an old high school friend. Saw that post about your sister. Are you okay? Is any of it true? True. That word stung the most. Truth had never mattered much in my family-only appearances. By noon, the post had hundreds of comments. Some people sided with me. Most didn't. Family first, no matter what. She must be heartless. Rich city people always forget where they came from. My hands trembled as I minimized the window, pretending to focus on the report due by 2. My coworkers' glances felt like spotlights. The office air grew thick with pity and judgment. At lunch, I sat in my car in the underground garage, the smell of concrete and gasoline pressing in. I tried calling my parents. No answer. Erica's phone went straight to voicemail. For a long minute, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Professional, composed, everything the article said I wasn't. But the truth was simpler and crueler. For the first time in my life, my parents had made our private cruelty public, and I had no idea how far they were willing to go next. By Wednesday, the blog post had already been shared hundreds of times. Clients had started canceling meetings to reschedule later, and the HR department sent me a polite but chilly email asking if I needed assistance managing online reputation issues. I kept telling myself it would blow over. People online forget fast. But what I didn't know was that Erica wasn't done, not even close. That morning, I was in the middle of a strategy call with a potential investor from New York when my assistant, Sophie, appeared at my glass door, pale and whispering urgently. "Lauren, you need to come downstairs." "I'm in a meeting," I mouthed, covering the mic. Her voice trembled. "It's your sister. She's in the lobby. She's live streaming." For a second, I didn't process the words. Then my stomach dropped. "Excuse me," I said into the headset, trying to sound composed. "I'll call you right back." The elevator ride to the first floor felt endless. I could already hear her voice before the doors opened, the pitch of public drama, high and bright and desperate. Through the glass lobby doors, Erica stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, mascara smudged like war paint. "She has everything!" she was shouting into her camera. "A condo, a cushy job, and she still refuses to help her own sister." A small crowd had gathered people from nearby offices, delivery drivers, even a few of my coworkers craning their necks through the windows. The Monarch Investments logo behind me gleamed like a cruel backdrop. "Erica!" I hissed, pushing through the revolving door. "What the hell are you doing?" She swung the camera toward me, her smile sharp. "Oh, here she is, the woman of the hour, Lauren Mitchell, the golden banker who abandoned her family." "Turn that off," I said quietly, trying to control my shaking hands. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, you're embarrassed," she shot back, "because people finally see who you really are." Someone in the crowd murmured. The phone's red recording light blinked like an accusation. I reached for her arm. "Let's talk inside." She jerked away. "You think you can hide behind your fancy office? You think your money makes you better than me? Erica, please." "Do you know what it's like?" she yelled, tears streaking through her foundation. "To lose everything while your sister watches from her skyline apartment?" My coworkers were watching now, frozen behind the glass walls. I saw Greg near the reception desk, face pale. He didn't move to intervene. He didn't need to. Security was already approaching. I lowered my voice. "You need to leave before this gets worse." Her laugh was jagged. "Worse?" "It's already worse. You ruined my life, Lauren. You could fix it in a second if you weren't so—" "Miss Mitchell," a guard interrupted gently. "Do you want us to escort her out?" "Yes," I said, the word barely audible. As they led her away, Erica screamed, "She's lying to everyone! She's not who you think she is!" The sound echoed through the marble lobby long after she was gone. I stood there motionless, the air heavy with humiliation. Phones were out. Someone was definitely still recording. When I finally looked at Greg, his expression was unreadable sympathy mixed with corporate caution. "Take the rest of the day off," he said quietly. "We'll handle the press." Back upstairs, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My inbox was exploding again. Links, screenshots, social tags. The live stream was already everywhere. Reposted, clipped, captioned. "Sister confronts banker sibling who refuses to help her." Cold-hearted or just protecting herself? The clip had over 200,000 views before noon. Comments flooded in, dissecting my face, my tone, my silence. I closed my laptop, staring out at the city spread beneath me. The same skyline that once made me feel powerful now looked like a glass cage. This wasn't just gossip anymore. It was defamation, and it was public. That night, Greg called. His voice was calm, deliberate. "Lauren, we're putting you on temporary leave. HR needs to review everything. This isn't about guilt, it's about optics. The firm's reputation comes first." I hung up without arguing. My career, the thing I had built piece by piece, was now collateral damage in a family war I never started. For years, I'd stayed silent to keep peace. But as I stared at the flickering screen replaying my sister's meltdown, I realized silence had never protected me. It had only made me an easier target. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. The morning after the live stream felt like waking up inside a storm you couldn't see but could hear everywhere. Notifications, emails, voicemails, each one was another gust of humiliation. I hadn't even brushed my hair when my phone buzzed again. It was Greg. "Come in," he said simply. "We need to talk." When someone in finance says we need to talk, it usually means this is going to hurt. The office was quieter than usual when I arrived. Conversations stopped as I walked past. I could feel it, the pity, the curiosity, the judgment. Greg's door was open, but the blinds were drawn for privacy. He stood as I entered. "Close the door, Lauren." I did. My stomach felt like it was twisting itself into knots. He motioned for me to sit. "I watched the video." "Of course you did," I muttered, trying to smile, but failing. He sighed. "Look, I know this isn't fair. You didn't ask for any of it, but the firm's name showed up in the footage, our logo, our clients in the background. The board is nervous." "I understand," I said, though my throat felt tight. "You're putting me on leave." He hesitated before nodding. "Temporarily. You'll still get paid, but you need to focus on cleaning this up, not just for us, for you." I wanted to scream, but all I could do was whisper, "How do you clean up when it's your family lighting the match?" Greg leaned back, studying me. "You can't reason with people who want chaos, Lauren. You have to protect yourself." He opened a folder on his desk and slid a business card across to me. "Eleanor Vargas, Family and Civil Litigation." "She's one of the best. The firm used her last year for a harassment case. She doesn't scare easily." I stared at the card, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. "Greg, I can't afford a top-tier lawyer right now. My refinance—" He cut me off. "She owes me a favor. The consultation's free, and if she takes your case, she'll work out payment later." For the first time in days, I felt something other than fear direction. Greg met my eyes. "You've spent your life holding things together. Let someone else hold the line for you this time." As I left his office, gripping Eleanor's card, I caught my reflection in the glass wall, tired, bruised, but still standing. Maybe, just maybe, this was where I stopped surviving and started fighting back. Meeting Eleanor Vargas felt like stepping into a different kind of world, one where people didn't flinch at conflict, they dissected it. Her office sat high above the river, all glass and steel, with the kind of confidence money buys, but only experience justifies. She shook my hand firmly. "Greg told me you've had a rough week." "Sit down. Tell me everything." I told her about the dinner, the blog, the live stream, each event like a domino knocking the next. She listened without interruption, only scribbling notes in neat, looping handwriting. When I finally stopped, my throat dry, she leaned back and said, "Your parents are escalating. This isn't emotional chaos, it's strategic." "Strategic?" I repeated, incredulous. "Yes, the public shaming, the pressure, it's all leverage. They want something specific. Money, most likely. Before we talk lawsuits, I need to know, is there any shared financial history, anything they could use against you?" I shook my head. "No. I've always been careful, separate accounts since college." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then check your credit report tonight. Every line." People who cross boundaries emotionally often cross them financially too. That suggestion followed me home like an echo. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the city humming beyond my windows. I'd pulled up my credit file hundreds of times before. It was always spotless. This time, something different glared back. A loan. 2, actually. Mitchell Lauren E. Issued, 2012. Federal student consolidation total, $28,600. Status, active, paid. My hands froze on the trackpad. I never consolidated anything. My student loans were private and long since repaid. These weren't mine. I clicked through the statements. The listed university wasn't even the one I'd attended. The funds had been sent to a joint family checking account under my parents' address in Evanston. For a moment, everything went quiet. So quiet I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then the nausea hit. They'd taken out loans. In my name. While I was in college, while I was working 3 jobs and skipping meals to make rent, the betrayal hit harder than any blog or live stream ever could. This wasn't emotional manipulation, it was theft, disguised as love. I called Eleanor immediately. She answered on the second ring. "I checked," I said, my voice trembling. "There are loans under my name, federal ones. I never signed for them." She didn't sound surprised. "Print everything. Every document, every email notification you can find. Tomorrow morning, we'll meet with a financial forensics expert." "Eleanor," I whispered, "this has to be a mistake." "My parents wouldn't—" "Lauren." Her tone softened but stayed firm. "People don't sue their own children unless the boundaries are already gone. You're not dealing with the parents you think you have. You're dealing with the people they've become." After we hung up, I sat there for hours, surrounded by paper, the ghost of every sacrifice I'd ever made. Old bank statements, tax forms, faded pay stubs from waitressing nights at the Brick House Diner back in Champaign. I'd lived on black coffee and instant noodles to stay afloat, and all the while, they'd been cashing in on my name. The irony made me laugh hollow, bitter. I used to believe independence protected me from them. Turns out they'd found a way to profit off my independence, too. As the sun crept through the blinds, painting the walls gold, I realized something had shifted. The fear that had paralyzed me since that blog post was gone, replaced by something sharper. Resolve. They wanted to paint me as selfish. Maybe it was time to show them what self-preservation really looked like. It had been 3 days since I uncovered the fraudulent student loans, and the betrayal still felt like a physical wound. I barely slept, running on caffeine and fury, trying to piece together how deep the damage went. Eleanor had been methodical. She'd connected me with Marcus, a financial forensics specialist, who confirmed my worst fear. The forged documents bore my parents' handwriting. They had used my social security number. It wasn't just theft, it was identity fraud. By Friday morning, my life was a spreadsheet of evidence. Every cell told a story of deceit. But even as I built the case, I knew one thing was missing: proof of motive. Why now? That answer came in the most unexpected form. An email from Daniel Reeves, my sister's soon-to-be ex-husband. Subject: we need to talk about your family. I almost deleted it, but something about the tone, formal, weary, not vindictive, made me pause. I replied with 2 words: name the place. We met that evening at the Birchwood Cafe near the river, a quiet place where no one cared enough to eavesdrop. Daniel looked different from how I remembered him at the wedding years ago, less polished, more human. His tailored suit had been replaced by rolled-up sleeves and tired eyes. "Lauren," he greeted, standing as I approached. "Thank you for coming." I crossed my arms. "Let's skip the small talk. Why are you reaching out to me?" He exhaled slowly. "Because your parents and Erica are about to drag you into something far worse than a family feud." My pulse quickened. "Go on." He slid a thick folder across the table. Inside were printed screenshots, text messages, bank statements, and photos. "She's been gambling," he said quietly. "Online, casinos, even underground games. It started small during lockdown, then spiraled. Your parents covered her debts, credit cards, personal loans, whatever they could pull together. But the last year, they got desperate." I flipped through the pages, my throat tightening. "So that's where the loan money went." Daniel nodded grimly. "They took out multiple loans under different names, yours included. They used your credit to make it look legitimate." I felt a hollow laugh escape me. "So they built their safety net out of me." He looked guilty. I didn't know at first. "When I found out, I confronted Erica. She said your parents told her you'd never notice that you had more than enough. That's when I filed for divorce." My jaw clenched. "And now they're blaming me for her fall from grace." "Exactly," he said. "The public smear, the lawsuit, they're not about family loyalty. They're about survival. Your parents are nearly bankrupt. If Erica loses this divorce, she gets nothing. That's why they need your money, your property, your silence." I stared at him, the air in the cafe suddenly heavy. "Why are you telling me this, Daniel? You could walk away." He hesitated. "Because they tried to threaten me, too. Your father called my employer, hinted I'd been abusive. It nearly cost me my job. If they're willing to lie about me, I can only imagine what they'll do to you." For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. There was someone else who understood just how twisted this web had become. "What do you want from me?" I asked. He met my eyes steadily. "Nothing. I want to help you expose them. You deserve to know the truth, and they deserve to face it." I closed the folder and nodded. "Then we're allies." "Enemies of the same enemy," he said with a faint, tired smile. As I left the cafe, the city lights shimmered on the river below, distorted but unbroken. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt clarity. They wanted to play dirty? Fine, but I had allies now, and evidence. The game had just changed. After my meeting with Daniel, sleep became a stranger. Every sound outside my window made me flinch. Every creak of the building felt like a warning. I had proof of their fraud, now documents, text messages, even Daniel's testimony, but deep down, I knew my parents wouldn't stop. Not until I was stripped of everything that made me independent. That night, I left the folder of evidence on my kitchen counter and double-checked the locks on every door. Chicago's West Loop was usually lively. Even after midnight, the hum of traffic, the occasional siren, the faint bass of a distant bar, but tonight the air felt wrong. Still, heavy. I tried to convince myself it was just paranoia until the sound came again, metal scraping against metal. My front door handle. I froze, mug halfway to my lips. Then came a soft click, the unmistakable sound of a key turning halfway in the lock. My breath caught. No one had a spare key except me. Or at least, that's what I thought. I reached for my phone and dialed Zoe, my oldest friend. She'd been my anchor through this madness. She answered on the second ring. "Lauren?" "It's 1 a.m. Are you okay?" "There's someone at my door," I whispered. "Stay on the line." A pause. "Do you want me to call the police?" "Not yet." I crept closer, heart hammering. Through the peephole, two blurred shapes stood in the hallway, one tall, one shorter, both familiar. My father's broad shoulders, my mother's ivory coat. I nearly dropped the phone. "It's them," I mouthed. "What?" Zoe hissed. "Your parents?" I backed away, gripping the countertop. "They have a key. They're trying to get in. Lauren, hang up and call 911, now." But before I could move, the lock gave way with a quiet snap. The door eased open a few inches. My father's voice was a low murmur. "Check the office first," he said. "My office, the one with my financial files." I darted toward the hallway closet, pulling out the small metal bar I used to secure the sliding window. I jammed it under the doorknob just as my father pushed the door wider. The wood groaned against the pressure. "Lauren?" My mother's voice floated through, soft, almost pleading. "Sweetheart, are you home?" Her tone was so normal, so practiced, it almost broke me. "Go away!" I shouted. "You have no right to be here." "Don't make this harder," she said. "We just need to talk. You've been misled." "By whom? The evidence you forged? The loans you stole?" There was silence, then a hissed whisper I barely caught. "Robert, she knows." The doorknob rattled again, harder this time. My phone buzzed. "Zoe." "I called the cops," she said. "Stay where you are." From outside, my father cursed under his breath. "We're wasting time." Then footsteps retreated down the hall. I stayed frozen until I heard the elevator ding, followed by the faint wail of sirens approaching below. When the police arrived, my parents were gone. The officers checked the door. It was scratched around the lock. "They used an old key," one said, jotting notes. "Probably copied before you changed it." I handed them the building's security footage, my voice trembling as I explained who they were and why they'd come. The younger officer looked uncomfortable. "Your own parents?" "Yes," I said, my throat tightening. "My own parents." After they left, Zoe arrived in her pajamas, hair messy from rushing out. She wrapped her arms around me. "You're shaking." "I can't believe it," I whispered. "They broke in. They were looking for something, probably the loan records, maybe Daniel's documents. They wanted to destroy the proof." Zoe glanced toward the counter where the evidence folder still sat. "They didn't get what they came for." I looked at it too, at the neat stack of papers that could end this nightmare. My hands still trembled, but something inside me shifted. Fear was giving way to resolve. "They want war," I said quietly. "They just declared it." Zoe's eyes hardened. "Then you'd better make sure you win." Outside, the sirens faded into the distance, leaving only the hum of the city and the knowledge that the line between family and enemy had finally, irreversibly, been crossed. 2 days after the break-in, I was running on adrenaline and coffee. The police report was filed, Eleanor had the footage, and for a fleeting moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, the worst was over. Then came the email. Subject, refinance application. Status update. I clicked it open, expecting routine paperwork approval from First Harbor Bank. Instead, the words blurred before my eyes. "We regret to inform you that your refinancing request has been declined due to discrepancies found in your credit history." Discrepancies. That one word detonated like a bomb in my chest. I called the bank immediately. The customer service rep, polite but detached, read from a script. "Miss Mitchell, we identified multiple delinquent student loans under your name, as well as a recent inquiry related to identity verification. Until those matters are resolved, we're unable to proceed." I gripped the phone so tightly it hurt. "Those loans aren't mine. I've already reported them as fraudulent." "I understand, ma'am. she replied in the kind of tone that meant she didn't. But until the Department of Education clears the investigation, the loans remain active on your report. It felt like the room tilted. My entire plan, refinancing the condo to secure the down payment on the Oak Park property, was gone. Is there anything I can do? I asked weakly. Not at this time, she said. I'm sorry. Sorry. The word was meaningless. I hung up and just stared at the laptop screen. Every dream I'd built, the promotion, the investment, the sense of control, crumbled in seconds because of them. The phone buzzed again. Zoe. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said when I answered. I just lost my refinance, I said flatly. They used my fake loans to sink it. My credit's trashed. Lauren. Her voice softened. You need to hit back harder. This isn't just family drama anymore, it's financial sabotage. I looked around my apartment, the place that had symbolized my freedom. Now it felt like a cage. They took everything they could from me, I said quietly, but they still underestimated one thing. What's that? I keep receipts. And this time, I'm not just defending myself, I'm going to expose them. As I hung up, I wasn't trembling anymore. The shock had hardened into something sharper. Resolve. The next move wouldn't be theirs. It would be mine. By the time dawn crept across the skyline, I had stopped shaking. The fear, the humiliation, the exhaustion, it all burned down to a single sharp emotion. Focus. If my parents wanted war, they were about to learn that I didn't fight fair anymore. I spent the morning in Eleanor Vargas's office, a fortress of calm efficiency high above the city. She was already reviewing the folders I'd sent overnight financial records, screenshots, emails, and Daniel's statements about the gambling and blackmail. You've built a solid base, she said, sliding her glasses up the bridge of her nose. Now we go on offense. How? I asked, half daring myself to believe this was possible. She leaned forward, her tone all business. We'll file a counterclaim before they can make another move: harassment, identity theft, financial fraud, and emotional distress. You have the documents, we have witnesses, Daniel will testify if needed. And we'll subpoena their bank records to expose the fraudulent loans. For the first time in weeks, I felt like the ground beneath me wasn't shifting. What about the public damage? I asked quietly. The blog, the live stream, the way they've made me look? Eleanor's lips curved in a small, knowing smile. Let's just say I know a few journalists who enjoy the taste of truth. When the time comes, we'll let them feast. Zoe arrived halfway through the meeting, carrying 2 coffees and her unshakable energy. I can help organize the timeline, she offered. Every text, every post, every time they contacted you after being told not to. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Good. A clean narrative of escalation helps the court see the pattern. This isn't a family disagreement, it's sustained harassment. We worked for hours, cross-checking dates, highlighting patterns, categorizing proof. Every document felt like another brick in a wall I was finally building to protect myself. At one point, Eleanor looked up from the file and said quietly, Lauren, I've handled plenty of messy families, but yours? They crossed from dysfunction into criminal territory. You understand what that means? I nodded. It means I stopped playing the role they wrote for me. By the time I left her office, the city glowed in the fading sunset. For once, I didn't feel small under it. Tomorrow, they'd learn what it felt like to face the daughter they'd underestimated. The court summons arrived on a rainy Thursday morning, tucked neatly among my bills like a snake waiting in the grass. Plaintiffs, Robert and Helen Mitchell. Defendant, Lauren Mitchell. My parents were suing me. The claim was absurd, alleging that I'd verbally agreed to sell my condo to support the family during a time of crisis. They even listed my childhood journals as evidence of intent, quoting old entries about wanting to always take care of my family. I read the lines over and over until the words blurred. Those journals weren't contracts. They were the scribbles of a 17-year-old desperate for love. When I brought the papers to Eleanor, she skimmed them once and exhaled sharply. This is theatrical nonsense, but dangerous nonsense. They're trying to twist your compassion into obligation. She placed the document aside and opened a new file, our counterclaim. Defendant's cross-complaint, identity theft, fraudulent loans, harassment, invasion of privacy, emotional distress. Eleanor's tone hardened. We're not just defending. We're going on the attack. A week later, we walked into the Cook County Courthouse. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and colder intentions. Across the aisle sat my parents, stiff, composed, and utterly unfamiliar. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother's lips trembled with practiced fragility. Beside them, Erica sat in a pale blazer, pretending to look small and wounded. Judge Harriet Wilson, sharp-eyed and efficient, called the room to order. Their attorney went first, spinning a web of sentimentality. "This is a family matter, Your Honor," he said smoothly. A misunderstanding turned unfortunate. The parents only seek fairness, a daughter's promise kept. When it was Eleanor's turn, her voice was ice. "What they seek, Your Honor, is access to my client's property and finances through coercion, fraud, and emotional manipulation." Then came the evidence. Screenshots, emails, forged loan applications, the bank statements Daniel had provided. Every page landed like a hammer. My mother's composure cracked first hands trembling, eyes darting to my father for rescue. When my father finally took the stand, Eleanor's cross-examination cut him clean open. "You claimed your daughter agreed verbally to sell her property?" "Yes." "Do you have that in writing?" "No." "Then what you have, Mr. Mitchell, is wishful thinking and a history of financial fraud." The courtroom fell silent. For the first time in my life, my parents looked small, and I finally felt free enough to breathe. The morning of the trial, Chicago was gray and cold, the kind of weather that makes the whole city feel like it's holding its breath. I sat in the back of the cab on the way to the courthouse, clutching a folder even though Eleanor had all the real evidence in her briefcase. My reflection in the window looked foreign-tired eyes, pressed navy suit, hair pulled into a bun so tight it hurt. "Are you ready?" Eleanor asked when I met her outside the Cook County Courthouse. She was her usual composed self-black coat, calm eyes, a presence that made chaos seem like background noise. "Not really," I said honestly. She smiled faintly. "Good. Only fools feel ready for war." Inside, the corridors buzzed with quiet tension. Reporters had gathered near the entrance. The blog post and live stream had turned our case into a minor media spectacle. Cameras flashed as we walked by, and I caught someone whispering my name. It took everything in me not to flinch. When we entered the courtroom, my parents were already there. My father in his navy suit, my mother clutching tissues like a prop. Beside them sat Erica, expression carefully blank, as though she had rehearsed her remorse. I hadn't seen them since the night they broke into my apartment. Seeing them here, under fluorescent light and legal scrutiny, felt surreal-like staring at actors who used to play my family. Judge Harriet Wilson entered, firm but not unkind. "Court is now in session." Her voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. Their attorney, a silver-haired man named Tom Callahan, began with a speech that was almost poetic. "This is not about greed," he said, pacing before the judge. "This is about love misguided, perhaps, but love." Parents who sacrificed everything for their daughters, now misunderstood by one of them. Families can be messy, but that doesn't make them criminal. I wanted to laugh. Love? Is that what they called forging my signature and ruining my credit? Eleanor rose, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Your Honor, this case is not about love. It's about control. It's about parents who used their daughter's financial identity as a piggy bank, who stalked, harassed, and defamed her when she refused to fund their mistakes." She turned slightly toward me. "Ms. Mitchell's independence was never a rebellion. It was survival." The judge nodded slowly. "Proceed." Eleanor began presenting our evidence: the fake loans, the security footage from the break-in, the bank statements showing withdrawals that matched casino payments under Erica's name. Each document was another fracture in my parents' composure. Then came the audio recording my father's voice, cold and clear. "You were always meant to be the safety net for your sister. That's your role in this family." The courtroom went still. My mother's eyes filled with tears, real this time maybe. Erica looked down, biting her lip. Callahan tried to recover, stammering something about emotional context, but the damage was done. During recess, I stood by the courthouse window, watching the rain streak the glass. Zoe squeezed my shoulder. "They can't spin this anymore," she whispered. "You've got them cornered." "I don't want them cornered," I murmured. "I just want them to stop." Eleanor joined us, setting her files on the bench. "We'll finish the presentation tomorrow." "The judge will see through their story, Lauren. You're doing everything right." I nodded, though my stomach churned. Part of me still wanted to believe in redemption, that somewhere under the lies, there was a version of my parents who loved me. But as I watched them across the courtroom, whispering furiously to each other, I realized that version didn't exist anymore. The fight wasn't just about property or money now. It was about the right to define my own life, without them rewriting it for me. And as the bailiff called us back in, I straightened my spine. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the daughter being judged. I felt like the woman finally taking back her story. The second day of trial began with tension thick enough to taste. Everyone knew what was coming next. Daniel Reeves was about to testify. I hadn't seen him since we built the timeline together weeks ago. Now, he looked every bit the reluctant witness sleeves rolled down, tie slightly crooked, calm but heavy-eyed. As he took the stand, my sister Erica stiffened in her seat. My mother whispered something to her. My father stared at Daniel with the quiet fury of a man who'd lost control of the narrative. Eleanor stood, her voice steady. "Mr. Reeves, please tell the court your relationship to the plaintiffs." Daniel cleared his throat. "I was married to their younger daughter, Erica. We've been separated for 8 months. And during that time," Eleanor continued, "did you become aware of any financial dealings involving the defendants, Robert and Helen Mitchell, using identities or funds not belonging to them?" Daniel hesitated only a moment. "Yes, I discovered they'd taken out multiple loans in Lauren's name years ago. Federal student loans, business lines of credit. Some were used to pay off gambling debts Erica had accumulated. Others went toward their personal accounts." A ripple spread through the courtroom. My parents' attorney rose immediately. "Objection! Speculation, Mr. Reeves cannot verify where the funds went." Eleanor didn't flinch. "We have bank statements, Your Honor. He's confirming the motive." "Overruled," Judge Wilson said coolly. "Proceed." Daniel exhaled slowly, then continued. "I confronted Erica when I found out. She told me her parents said Lauren would never find out, that she owed it to the family anyway, because she'd had it easier. But that wasn't true. Lauren worked for everything she had. The Mitchells—" He paused, then glanced at me. "They always expected her to rescue everyone else." Erica shot up from her chair. "That's a lie!" She snapped, voice trembling. "You're just trying to ruin me because I left you." Judge Wilson banged the gavel once. "Ms. Reeves, sit down or you'll be removed." Erica's eyes were wild as she dropped back into her seat. My father leaned toward her, whispering harshly, but the damage was done. The mask had cracked. Eleanor handed Daniel another document. "Mr. Reeves, could you identify this?" He looked down, nodding. "That's the promissory note Robert forged with Lauren's Social Security number. I found it in their home office." A collective gasp filled the room. My mother buried her face in her hands. Eleanor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this document was authenticated by a forensic examiner. The signature is not Ms. Mitchell's." Judge Wilson looked grim. "Duly noted." For a moment, the courtroom fell utterly silent, just the hum of the lights and the scratch of the court reporter's pen. Daniel looked at me once more before stepping down, and in his eyes I saw no triumph, just exhaustion. He'd lived his own version of this family's chaos. When he left the stand, Eleanor leaned close to me. "That was the turning point," she whispered. But I barely heard her. My parents' faces were burned into my mind shock, disbelief, and for the first time, fear. They'd built their entire case on the illusion of control, and Daniel had just shattered it in front of everyone. When Daniel stepped down from the stand, the silence in the courtroom was like a held breath that no one dared release. The truth hung there, heavy, undeniable. My parents sat frozen, pale and hollow-eyed. But it was Erica who couldn't bear it. I saw the tremor in her hands, the twitch at the corner of her mouth. It started with a whisper. "He's lying," she muttered, eyes fixed on the floor. Then louder, "They're all lying." Judge Wilson glanced up. "Ms. Reeves, you'll have your opportunity to speak when your attorney—" "No!" Erica's voice cracked, high and raw. "You don't get it! None of you get it!" Her lawyer tried to tug her arm, murmuring something, but she yanked free. "You all think she's the victim?" She pointed at me, eyes wild. "She's not! She's been ruining our lives for years!" My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I'd spent my whole life watching Erica perform smiling, pretending, twisting sympathy like a ribbon around her finger. But this wasn't performance anymore. This was collapse. "Erica," my mother whispered, voice trembling. "Sit down, sweetheart." "Don't call me that." She screamed. "You and Dad made me do everything. You said it was for the family, remember? You said Lauren had everything that she owed us. You told me to take what I deserved." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My father's face flushed red. "That's enough, Erica," he hissed, but she was past listening. "You made me marry Daniel." "You said he was our ticket out of debt." Her words came out in sobs now, jagged and breathless. "And when it fell apart, when I couldn't stop gambling, you covered it up, and then you made her pay for it." Her lawyer tried again to calm her, but she spun toward the judge instead. "They said it was okay because she'd never find out." "Because Lauren always forgives. That's what they said." The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final. "Ms. Reeves, control yourself or I'll have you removed from this courtroom." Erica's tears streaked her makeup, her voice breaking completely. "You think they're good people? They're not. They'd do anything to look perfect. Anything. Even destroy their own daughter." She collapsed into the witness chair, sobbing. My mother reached for her, whispering her name, but Erica flinched away like she'd been burned. Judge Wilson gestured for a short recess. The bailiff moved to escort Erica out, but not before she turned toward me one last time. Her eyes were glassy, desperate. "You wanted the truth, Lauren?" "There it is. Congratulations." Then she was gone, leaving the courtroom echoing with the wreckage of her confession. I sat perfectly still, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached. Every pair of eyes in that room, journalists, strangers, even the judge turned toward me. For years I'd been the quiet one, the responsible one, the daughter who fixed what others broke. And now, finally, the world could see what I'd been living through. Eleanor leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "That was the implosion. The judge won't forget this." Across the aisle, my father rubbed his temples, whispering furiously to my mother, who looked utterly shattered. Their attorney sat back, defeated, shuffling papers he'd never get to use. Outside the courtroom doors, the sound of reporters' voices grew louder. I knew what tomorrow's headlines would say. "Family fraud trial erupts. Daughter confesses to parental manipulation." When the recess was finally called, Zoe met me in the hallway, her eyes wide. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "It's like watching a house burn down, one you tried to save for years." She took my hand. "Then let it burn." You didn't start the fire. I looked through the glass doors at the storm of cameras waiting outside. For once, I didn't care. The truth was finally visible, raw and unfiltered. Inside that courtroom, everything they built on lies had just crumbled, and I hadn't even lifted a finger. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like their victim. I felt like their reckoning. The final day of the trial felt eerily quiet. No outbursts, no gasps, just exhaustion, the kind that sinks into your bones after weeks of truth unraveling in public. Judge Harriet Wilson entered the courtroom, her expression as unreadable as ever. The journalists leaned forward, pens ready. My parents sat at their table, diminished somehow. My father's once imposing posture slumped, my mother's face pale, her hands clasped like prayer couldn't save her now. Erica wasn't there. After her breakdown, the court had excused her from further testimony. I sat beside Eleanor, my heart beating so hard it felt like thunder trapped in my ribs. When the judge spoke, her voice was firm, deliberate. After reviewing all testimony and evidence, including documentation of fraudulent loans, unauthorized use of identity, and harassment, the court finds in favor of the defendant, Ms. Lauren Mitchell. The words didn't register at first. They just hung in the air, suspended, until Eleanor's hand touched mine. "You won," she whispered. Judge Wilson continued. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, the court orders restitution for financial damages totaling $78,000 to be paid to the defendant, along with attorney fees. My mother gasped softly, clutching my father's arm. He didn't move, just stared ahead, eyes glassy, like the weight of his own schemes had finally settled on his shoulders. Eleanor rose. "Thank you, Your Honor." The gavel struck once. Case closed, and just like that, it was over. Reporters swarmed as we exited the courthouse, questions fired from every direction. "Lauren, how does it feel to win against your parents? Did you expect your sister's confession? Will you press criminal charges?" I kept walking. I'd spent too long living under their stories. I didn't owe anyone another one. Outside, the cold air bit at my skin, but it felt cleansing, like I could finally breathe again. Zoe waited by the steps with 2 coffees, and that look she always gave me when words weren't enough. "So," she said softly, handing me a cup, "what now?" I looked up at the courthouse behind me, its gray stone catching the morning light. "Now I rebuild," I said. "Not just my finances, my peace." Eleanor joined us, tucking her files under one arm. "The restitution will take months, maybe years," she said. "But that's fine. You have your name back." That struck me harder than the victory itself. My name, something they'd stolen, twisted, used. Now it was mine again. Across the street, I caught sight of my parents getting into their car. My mother turned once, meeting my eyes through the glass. For a fleeting second, she looked like she might wave. Then she looked away. As the car disappeared into traffic, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not triumph, just quiet release. For years, I'd fought to prove my worth to them. Now I finally understood. Some families don't break apart. They rot quietly, from the inside, until truth forces the collapse. And sometimes losing them isn't a tragedy. It's freedom. 3 months after the verdict, the world finally felt quiet again. I still lived in the same apartment in the West Loop, but it no longer felt like a fortress under siege. The locks had been changed, the security cameras upgraded, and for the first time in years, I could sleep without leaving a light on. The city noise outside the traffic, the sirens, the laughter drifting from late-night bars felt like proof that life kept moving forward, even after chaos. Some days, I'd catch my reflection in the elevator mirror and barely recognize myself, not because I'd changed so much on the outside, but because there was no trace of the woman who used to walk on eggshells for other people's comfort. Eleanor once told me that healing after betrayal is less about forgiveness and more about reclamation. You take back what was stolen, your peace, your confidence, your sense of self, she'd said. I didn't understand it then. I do now. My career at Hawthorne and Pike Financial survived the scandal, though it took time. Gregory had reinstated me quietly after the verdict, not out of pity, but respect. "You faced hell and didn't flinch," he said during my first day back. "That's the kind of steadiness money can't buy." Zoe still teased me about becoming a corporate folk hero, the woman who sued her own parents and won, but we both knew it wasn't victory I was chasing. It was peace. As for my family, we hadn't spoken since that final day in court. The restitution payments began trickling in through their lawyer-cold, transactional, and oddly freeing. No letters, no apologies, just numbers on a statement. That was enough closure for me. Daniel moved to Denver for work, and before he left, we met for coffee one last time. "Guess this is what rebuilding looks like," he'd said, smiling faintly. "Yeah," I told him. "Turns out peace isn't glamorous, it's just steady." He nodded. "That's the best kind." I'd thought about reaching out to Erica once, but every draft of the message felt hollow. Her breakdown had shattered whatever illusions remained, and maybe that was mercy in its own way. Some distances are meant to stay intact. On weekends, I started volunteering at a nonprofit that taught financial literacy to women college students, single moms, survivors of exploitation. Every story I heard carried a piece of my own. Every face reminded me that strength isn't about never breaking, it's about rebuilding with clarity. Sometimes when I walk along the river at dusk, I think about my parents. Not with bitterness, but with the detached compassion you feel for people who never learned how to love without control. They taught me how to survive. Their absence taught me how to live. And maybe that's the quiet irony of it all. What they meant to destroy became the foundation of my freedom. I still keep the court documents in a box under my bed. Not out of anger, but as a reminder that peace isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn, one boundary, one truth, one brave step at a time. It was a late Sunday afternoon when I realized the war was truly over. I was sitting on the balcony of my apartment, a mug of chamomile tea in my hand, watching the city melt into gold. Chicago in early fall has this way of forgiving everything. The light softer, the air cooler, the skyline blurred just enough to make even the sharpest edges feel kind. Zoe had gone home after spending the morning helping me hang a few plants. The apartment looked warmer now, less like a bunker, more like a home. My new project proposal at Hawthorne and Pike had just been approved, and for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing stability. I was living it. I opened my journal, the new one, not the ones my parents had weaponized, and began to write again. Not to explain, not to justify, just to remember. The sound of a violin drifted up from the street below, someone busking near the cafe on the corner. The melody was raw and beautiful, a little off-key but full of heart. It reminded me of something Eleanor had told me after the trial. Healing doesn't mean you erase the noise. It means you learn which sounds are worth listening to. For years, I had listened to guilt, duty, manipulation. Those voices had shaped my choices, my fears, even my sense of worth. But sitting there, watching the sunset spread across the glass towers, I finally understood something simple but life-changing. Peace isn't found in silence. It's found in clarity. The phone buzzed with a message from Zoe. "Dinner next week? You're cooking." I smiled, typing back, "You just want my lasagna again." For the first time, laughter came easy. Looking back, I used to think family was something unbreakable, an unspoken promise written in blood. But I've learned that love without respect is just control disguised as care. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't standing up to strangers, it's standing up to the people who taught you to stay small. If there's one thing my story taught me, it's that freedom isn't loud or dramatic, it's quiet. It's the moment you realize you no longer need permission to protect your own peace. You can choose boundaries without guilt. You can choose distance without hate. And you can love yourself enough to start again, even when the people who should have loved you first tried to destroy you. Because in the end, revenge isn't always about hurting back, it's about healing better. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt like you had to shrink yourself to be loved, please remember, you don't owe anyone your peace to prove your loyalty. You owe yourself the life you deserve. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And tell me in the comments, what does family mean to you now?